Welcome to Gamechangers live from Miami, Florida. My name is Sergio Tigera. I'm your host. And each and every week, we bring you someone who has been a game changer in their field and who's touched the lives of thousands to get their perspective on their journey, their mindset, their struggles and successes so that we can inspire you on your journey. So let's get started right now. And welcome to Gamechangers Live. You can catch us each and every week on your favorite podcast channel, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, as well as starting on April 1st, we're very proud to be now partnering with Island TV, which broadcasts in the South Florida area, Comcast, as well as in the Caribbean, around 13 countries. So we are very excited to have our guest on today is Dan Brdar. He's the president, CEO, and director of Ideal Power. Dan has over 30 years experience in the power systems and energy industries and has held a variety of leadership positions during his career. So in addition to his role at Ideal Power, he served as president and CEO of FuelCell Energy, Inc., a Nasdaq-listed company with a market cap of over $250 million. He also served as the chief operating officer of Petra Solar, as well as Gas Turbine Product Manager for GE's Power Systems division. Tell me a little bit about you and your background, because obviously you've had a very long career in this energy space. Is this something that you've always been interested in?
I have. I've been in bringing new energy technologies to market my whole career. I was, in addition to the positions that you'd mentioned, I was actually an associate director at one of the Department of Energy National Labs, where I really saw technology from the standpoint of concept to getting it to commercialization. And I don't think most people realize that, having a great idea when you're dealing with true technology solutions, it's a long path to go from that idea to actually a commercial product. And it takes a long time to bring technology to market, to develop it, to be able to make it, to get it cost effective. And that always presents a lot of interesting challenges that I've always enjoyed being part of.
And in that role, what were some of the exciting projects that you were a part of?
I was involved in bringing some of the state-of-the-art gas turbines to the utility sector. I was involved in bringing fuel cells for stationary power to the marketplace. I've been involved in distributed solar applications where all the solar panels were talking to each other through a wireless network of communications. And now at Ideal Power, bringing a new semiconductor device that can bring a higher level of performance to a whole variety of applications like electric vehicles, EV charging, solar energy, energy storage, and many more.
Obviously, you've taken leadership roles in this industry. What is it like, and what's your leadership philosophy?
Well, part of it is you've got to build a good team because typically when you're bringing a new technology, particularly in the energy space, to the market, there's a lot of unknowns. You're trying to do something no one's ever done before. You're usually pushing the limits of what engineering believes is possible to do at any given point in time. And you got to have people around you who feel free to tell you what they think, knowing that you're not going to have all the information you'd like to make, and having the courage to make decisions that they might be right, they might be not. But trust the people that you've put around you to really give you good counsel from their perspective and their areas of expertise.
So there's an old saying that I'm sure you've heard, done is better than perfect.
Yes, for sure.
Is that true in this space?
It is very much so. You think about how technology evolves. Think about flat screen TVs. When they first came out, they were $20,000 probably for a 40-inch TV that had a terrible picture. You can now go to Walmart and buy a 60-inch TV for probably $400 or $500 that has a spectacular picture.
Right.
That's just the natural way that technology evolves, where you've got to get it to the point where first it works, and then it's how do you make it perform better? How do you bring its cost down? How do you add more features and capability to it? And that's where there's a lot of fun and a lot of challenges that I think, if you are a technical person or enjoy seeing technology evolve, can be pretty exciting.
Now, it can't all be fun and games, right? You, as an entrepreneur or entrepreneurial-minded person and leader, I'm sure you've come across situations where perhaps you were just, saying, am I throwing my hands up at this point? Is this going to work? Am I hitting my head against the wall? Am I going in the right direction? These are all questions that, any entrepreneur asks, but especially when you're developing these types of products, it's not cheap. And so there are additional pressures. Or were there times where you were doubting yourself, or you had to kind of pick yourself back up after some obstacles?
It happens all the time, because unfortunately, especially if you're working in the area of a new technology, the earlier you are in that development, the quicker you think it's going to go, the easier it's going to be, and the less it's going to cost. And you find out that the things that you learn along the way all take time, money, expertise. And at the end of the day, a lot of times you're having to make decisions about what you want to do to either improve a technology or change how you're going to use it, where you don't know what the right answer is because it just hasn't been done before. So you really have to assemble what facts you can and use your judgment and make a decision and be ready to change course if you need to.
And so how often do you question assumptions, and how often do you go with your gut feel in making important decisions?
Well, I think you always have to challenge the assumptions because you can fall victim to just listening to yourself and what you believe and maybe what you want. So I think you always have to go back to first principles and say, are the assumptions that I was using before, are they still valid? Has something changed? We live in a world where, we've got a rapidly increasing rate of change in everything. So you have to keep questioning, are the assumptions that you came into this, are they still the right ones? What's new? And then, make your course corrections from there if you need to.
So when you started Ideal Power, or you started at Ideal Power, tell me about the company. What state was it in when you first found it? And then where is it today? And we'll talk a little bit about what you guys are doing in that space.
Sure. The company went public with a power converter technology. It was really targeted to take the DC energy that comes from solar panels and batteries and convert it to AC so that you can use it. The company was really focusing on the sort of the commercial and industrial market, where we were part of a solution that other companies would bring to a business. So we had captured customers like Sharp and Mercedes and Gexpro and others that were bringing a turnkey energy storage solution to businesses to help them save money on their utility bills. And what we saw was that the commercial industrial market for energy storage was taking too long to develop. We saw some of those same companies I just mentioned exit the space because it was taking too long. We had developed our semiconductor technology as a way to make our power converter a better product, make it more efficient. And we realized there's a much bigger opportunity in the semiconductor space. So we literally sold off the power converter business and began focusing exclusively on our semiconductor technology that has broad applicability to a lot of products and technologies out there.
Because assuming the semiconductor being a smaller piece, obviously more highly technical, which could add a lot more value and could be exponentially grown, it looks like a better business model than the actual converter itself.
It does. It takes less capital because a lot of companies that make semiconductors, they rely on companies that are basically wafer fabs. So they're a sort of a fabless model. And the semiconductor market, the one that we're focusing on, it's a multi-billion-dollar market. So there's a big addressable market that's already there that we can help to improve. What most people don't realize is how big a role semiconductors play in your life. You think about every appliance in your house, microwaves, washer, dryer, refrigerator, they all have semiconductors in them. Your phone, your TVs. You think about what's happening with electric vehicles. People think about how fundamentally the auto industry is changing, moving to electric vehicles. And I think people recognize, well, the batteries are a big part of the cost. But the second biggest cost component in an electric vehicle are the semiconductors. So if you can have semiconductors that are lower cost and can allow the batteries to get a longer range, you can have a significant impact on what electric vehicles look like. And that's part of what we're focusing on.
And the shortage of semiconductors was one of the big issues with the lack of vehicles and the vehicle prices going up and so forth because of the shortage, correct?
Correct. And that's still going on. That's an ongoing process. But what's interesting is, a lot of the semiconductor industry had largely moved offshore. A lot of it was being made in Taiwan and Japan and other places. And now you look all around and you're seeing a huge investment in capacity. We're here in Austin, Texas, and Samsung is building a $17 billion wafer fabrication facility here.
Wow.
We've heard many other fabs that are going to be built here in the U.S. because I think what's also becoming apparent is, we live in a turbulent world. And semiconductors are such an integral part to every industry anymore that you have to have local domestic capability just from a pure national security standpoint.
How has the advancement in technology and the lowering in cost, at what point is it possible for individuals, let's say, or smaller businesses to start creating their own semiconductors? Is that even possible?
It is.
In the future or what?
We're a small company, and there are many small companies that work in the semiconductor space. And a lot of it is because the industry has become so large that there's a segregation of what players do. You have some companies where all they do is they take the designs for your semiconductor and they run silicon wafers that have those features in them as a service for you. And there's other firms that will take those wafers and dice them up and package them, where a company like us can really focus on technology. We can focus on engineering and really rely on this infrastructure that's been built in this huge semiconductor space, where as a small team, we can actually come out with a really innovative product without having to have all that investment to build the capability to make all those devices and sell them.
So you focus on the design elements, which is where the kind of highly technical thinking is involved, and then the actual production, you can just outsource that out.
Correct. And it's a very common model in the semiconductor business anymore because, you know, as part of driving costs down in semiconductors, it becomes about scale. You know, how many thousands of wafers can a facility produce and run that facility at a really high utilization rate? So it encourages players that have similar needs and capabilities to actually use common facilities to actually have their devices made.
How has the impact of blockchain technology, I don't want to say crypto, but blockchain technology in general, how is that impacting the industry?
Well, it's certainly increasing the demand for computing power. You know, our particular technology is related to the control of electricity, but there's a lot of semiconductors that are obviously all about memory. They're about processing speed. And as we get to more and more virtual systems, whether it's for managing currencies, whether it's for, for cryptocurrency, whether it's trading stocks, whatever the case may be, it all requires more and more data storage, and it requires more and more computing capacity.
Mm-hmm. And so what is the future for Ideal Power? What's this year look like? What are some of your goals this year, and what do you see coming in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a really exciting time. We are to the point where we're coming through our development activities, and we've got several key things that are happening. One is we are signing agreements with companies that are going to be evaluating their technology to incorporate it into their products. So we've announced one of the global top 10 automakers is now going to be working with us. We've got another one that's in the queue. The largest solar providers, a couple of those are working with us. We've got companies that are working on EV charging. So we're going to be putting samples into those companies' hands to evaluate our device to be incorporated into their OEM products. And in the meantime, we're working on a demonstration of our technology where we are part of a program with the U.S. Navy, where the Navy's interested in ship electrification, and our technology can help make that a more efficient process. So we're partnered with a company called Diversified Technologies, where they will make a circuit breaker that incorporates our technology as part of how that device works.
What advice would you give individuals who are in college, they're getting out of college, or they're about to go into college and thinking about what careers to pursue, because everything is growing and advancing at such a rapid pace? I think what you go into as a freshman to study may not even be relevant by the time you graduate.
Yeah.
What kind of advice or direction would you give?
Well, I think part of it is, if you're one of those people who has always known exactly what you want to do, you're very fortunate. Very few people are actually in that role. So I think it's really make sure that if you're in the STEM area, science and technology and engineering, really focus on building good fundamentals while you're there. Just really understanding the fundamental math you're going to take, the fundamental principles of the classes that you're going to take, so you have a good technical basis to work from. Because what you're going to find is, as you get exposed to more and more things, you're going to have opportunities to do things that you didn't even know were an opportunity. And if you've got a good training in terms of how you think, good problem solving skills, good mathematical skills, it creates a lot of opportunities for you to go and do new things that you might find incredibly exciting, because you have an opportunity to really be leading in an area that maybe didn't exist when you first started going to school.
Did you know that you were going to be where you are today 15, 20 years ago? Is that what you expected, or did you pivot as you went through?
Not a clue. Not a clue. It was, enjoy the ride, look where there are good opportunities. I always viewed it as, if I was going to go do something, if I was learning something new and I was being challenged as a result of that, it was something I wanted to do. If it was a case of, hey, I know I can do that really well because I've done it for 10 years, I would be bored out of my mind. So for me, it's always about doing something where you're learning. You're learning from the people you work with. You're learning from the people that your business collaborates with, because that's what makes it interesting in terms of getting up and going to work every day. No one wants to be doing the same thing over and over again because it becomes boring. You're not growing anymore as a result of that.
Yeah, there's an importance between having a purpose and a challenge every day that you get excited about. Who are your mentors? Who are the people that inspired you and still do?
I was fortunate that I had worked for some really good people when I was at General Electric, who I really learned a lot about what makes a company successful, why do they do the things they do. But then also, as I started working for some small companies, I learned from some really good people on, all right, you learn some great skills at General Electric. How do you adapt those for a small company? Because you don't have the same resources, you don't have the same infrastructure, but you learn things that you say, all right, we don't want to be GE, but there's some really good management tools there that we can adapt for what we're doing at the smaller company, and figure out how to do that. And the interesting thing to me was, having been in really big organizations like the Department of Energy and GE, you are surrounded by great people. There's great management teams. You learn a lot about what makes big companies successful. But when you take those lessons and go to a small company, you get a satisfaction that at least I never had at a big company, because you can actually see your impact as a result of what you do.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I love about being on my own, is that you're doing it for yourself and for your own purpose, your own mission. And you know what? Your results are what they are based on what you do and the decisions that you take. There's nobody else to turn around and say, hey, bad decision.
I own it. Sorry. My bad.
And speaking of ownership, right? That is such a key component of a successful life, is taking ownership of your situation, whether you're starting off, or whether you're a CEO or you're middle management, or you're starting off your own business. Taking ownership of your decisions and living with them, right? I mean, and either you learn or you grow, or you learn, right? Either way is going to work.
As someone who's made lots of decisions, good and bad, I can tell you, you learn 10 times as much from the things that didn't go well as the things that did. Because a lot of times things that go well, there may be more luck in it than you realize in terms of something that turned out really well. But if it goes bad, you own it. It's yours. You have to figure out why it was bad. You have to figure out why the decision wasn't a good one. And more importantly, then what are you going to do about it? That's really where the growth comes. And that's really where you have to stretch to figure out, what do I take from this? And now where do we go as a result of that?
So I always ask my guests this question: was there a time in your life where you had a game-changing moment or experience, or something that happened, or a series of events that really lit the light bulb and kind of changed the trajectory of your life, or something that had a huge impact on you?
Well, this is going to sound silly, but when I decided I didn't want to be in a big company anymore, I was literally outside cutting my grass. And my neighbor came by and he said, Dan, you're a GE executive. Why are you cutting your grass? You're just too cheap to do it. And without thinking about it, the answer came out of my mouth was, when I'm done cutting my grass, I see the results of my effort. And I don't see that for weeks at a time working in a big company. And I walked in and I told my wife, I'm leaving GE. And she's like, what? I said, I'm leaving GE. I want to go work at a small company where I can do things that actually have a direct impact. So it was something as simple as my neighbor asking me a question while I'm cutting my grass, and changing the course.
And that's incredible, because does he know the impact that question had on you?
He does, because when I talk to him, I keep in touch with him, and he keeps saying, look, if it didn't work out, it's not my fault. I just happened to be walking by,
I give advice, but I'm not responsible for it if it doesn't
That's
work
right.
out. Right.
It's your decision. You own it.
Yeah. Well, but that's interesting because a lot of times we say things and we don't realize how they're landing necessarily, if they landed at all. But we could be having a profound impact on those that we speak to every day.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And as a leader, I'm sure that that carries a ton of weight in the work that you do every day.
Well, it's interesting because I'm fortunate that we're surrounded by some really good people, but they are of varying skills and ages. And people that are fresh out of school, or maybe they've just recently completed their master's degree or their PhD. How you interact with them may be very different from somebody who's been in the business for 30 years and worked at big and small companies, or somebody that comes from a completely different culture. I tease our guys. I'm the only non-PhD sitting in a room figuring out technical stuff, but it gives me the right to ask what people might think is a stupid question, because I can say, I'm not the PhD, but what if we did this?
Yeah. Well, and you make a good point, because surrounding yourself with people who are smarter, brighter than you always elevates the tide for you in your life. And I always tell my clients, think about the people that you surround yourself with and consider them your personal board of advisors, right? Do you have the right people in those seats giving you, their perspective from down the road that could help you now?
That's right. And it's important too, as you get into management roles and thinking about who you hire, because what you'll find is people who are A players, they want to hire other A players because they know it lifts their game. They know they'll learn from them. They're thinking about who's going to succeed me. People who are B players tend to hire C players because they don't want somebody to show them up. They want somebody that's just going to do what they're told. So think about it. It's like when I'm looking to hire people for certain roles, I'm not thinking about just the role they're in. I'm thinking about where are they going to be the next role or the role after that. I've literally been in cases where the person I was hiring for a particular role, I'm sitting there asking myself, will you be ready to take my job in a year or 2 years? And if not, why not? Because I want to hire somebody that's going to take my job.
And that's an interesting approach, and that takes a lot of confidence and belief in yourself to not be impacted by that, right? And having enough confidence for that.
If you want your team to succeed, you really want to build as strong a team as you can. You owe it to everybody to do that.
So what's more important, experience or grit?
Oh, grit. You got to have people that are willing to deal with whatever the issues, who are willing to say, all right, I'm not going to get emotional about this. I want to sit down and we're going to go figure it out. We may have to go do some work to even figure out what the problem is, but I have the passion, the perseverance, and the ability to focus and say, we're going to figure out what we got to go do.
Well, you're doing some great things as CEO of Ideal Power. You can find them on the Nasdaq IPWR as well as idealpower.com. Dan, thank you so much for being on Gamechangers and all the advice you've given. I'm sure it's going to be impactful for our listeners.
Thanks, Sergio. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks again, guys, and be sure to be a game changer in your life and in the lives of others today.
If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. You may end up being the game changer in their lives.